Welcome to everyone. I'm Rebecca Snyder with the Maryland, Delaware, DC Press Association. This is our Into the Newsroom series, and today we have Alexander Piles of the University of Maryland, Merrill College of Journalism, coming to talk to us about how to bring data stories to life. This is the third section of a series that started with using Google Sheets to manipulate data, and visualizing that data into charts and graphs. And so Alex is going to tell us how to bring it all to life. He has been a lecturer at Merrill College since 2019, and he works with the Capitol News Service primarily as an audience editor. He's worked for several news organizations, including most recently the Baltimore Sun, where he managed State House coverage, among other projects. And I am excited to welcome him here today. So Alex, take it away.
Thank you, Rebecca, for having me here today. Thank you all for being here. I think this will be fun. So I think if you have taken the previous sessions in this sort of like trio of workshops that my colleagues at the University of Maryland have put together, you may already realize, and perhaps you just realize this from your experience, that the world is kind of awash in data, which just gives you immense opportunities to do much deeper reporting. Just a very fast example, in just doing a refresh of this presentation for you all, I spent a little time on the census website because I was looking for a number that I wanted to update in this presentation. And gosh, there's just pages and pages and pages and spreadsheets and spreadsheets and spreadsheets of population demographic data just on that one government website. So we are really surrounded by all of these opportunities as reporters. So I'm very happy that you're taking seriously taking advantage of those things. So data is great, right? It's a story that is backed by data is so worth telling, right? It's truly meaningful, but a story is also very difficult to tell without characters, without voices, without personal anecdotes. So whereas you started to acquire and manipulate and then visualize data in other sessions, my goal in this session is to help you use search best practices on the internet, especially on social media, to find the people and understand the trends that will, one, help you ask questions of the data that you've acquired and are analyzing, and then also to tell stories about that data with real people and experts that can help contextualize it. So we'll get started on that here. Before we get into the search, and we only have about an hour here, so I'll move as quickly as I can, but I also want to make sure that there's just sort of a general understanding about how to listen on the internet. And I'll explain how to define that here in a minute. And also how to verify what we find, which is just hugely important, right? So I'm going to share my screen, and I have a little presentation for you all, and we will go from there. At any point, if you need me to stop, slow down, go over something again, I'm happy to do that. Please just say so. So here's my contact information on this page. I will give Rebecca a link to these slides, and you can certainly take them with you after today if you'd like. So social listening, I mentioned this a few minutes ago, and I want to talk a little bit more about it now. So what many users of social media do, including journalists, is something that we would call social monitoring, which is sort of like the bare minimum buy-in for using social media to understand what conversations are happening on the internet. It includes things like keeping tabs of mentions when people are sending you direct messages, or mentioning you in a post, or mentioning your news organization, or mentioning a topic that you care about. You're also keeping track of maybe what your competitors are doing, whether that's a news organization or a journalist. These are sort of just the baseline things that I think most journalists and most people who are on social media who are in a competitive field are doing, right? But when I'm talking about social listening, it's actually, it's much more than that. It's more than just sort of keeping track of those kinds of things. Monitoring is kind of passive. And like I said, it's a bare minimum social media use. But listening is defined as much more, it's active, it's intentional, and the goal is to determine not only what's being said on these different social networks and really across the internet, but why it's being said and what that means. It's long-term and it's ongoing. This is using social media as a reporting tool and conducting social listening as you do it is not like a replacement for more traditional reporting methods. It's a supplement. And just like every other reporting method, cultivating sources, talking to people on your beat, listening is also long-term and ongoing. You should do this, throughout your life as a reporter. Certainly, if you're working on an audience team or on a social team, this is going to be a big part of what you're doing in a newsroom, but also for reporters and editors. So one way to think about listening just sort of at a very basic first level is that we want to spend some time kind of lurking online, listening, reading what's being written, trying to understand it, with the goal of ultimately participating in order to better understand what communities care about. Because one thing that we can really use this methodology and some of the tools that I'll show you to do is to understand the communities that we cover better. And this is especially useful if you're someone who's entering a new market, or if you're someone who's maybe stepping outside of your comfort zone, doing a story off of your beat or joining a new beat. Social listening can really help us understand very quickly and over time what our communities care about, and it can inform our reporting and make it better, right? And also make data stories better, right? Because we understand what we could be looking for or should be looking for in the data that we're using to tell these really compelling, deeply reported stories. So some other things that go along with social listening, and there are, the next slide will show you some tools that will measure some of this for you. Everything that I'm going to show you today is free on the internet. It doesn't require a subscription. Just know that there are subscription services out there that will help you to organize some of this data, but it's also not entirely necessary unless you're really doing these things at scale. So social listening is also understanding the sentiment of what's being written. So is it a positive, negative, or neutral? And I'll show you an example of that here in a minute. It's understanding trends for you, your profession, or your beat. And it's understanding questions that the audience is asking within a particular community. So really, this is just adding a little bit of critical thinking to sort of the mindless scrolling through a social feed or the scrolling through a Google search results page that we might just do as part of our daily routine. So as I mentioned, some external rules can make this easier. All of the ones here are good. At Capital News Service, we use Hootsuite. In my teaching, I use a lot of lessons from Sprout Social. I previously had a subscription to Meltwater, which provides you a great deal of audience statistics. There's others as well. But again, the things that we're going to look at today are all built into either Google or built into social media networks and are totally free, right? You just need to have an account. There's also a couple other websites that I want to show you now that are good for like sort of this top level understanding what the conversation is online around a certain topic. And then we'll get into a little bit more narrow searches later. But I want to start here with Social Searcher. And this is just social-searcher.com. And there is, as with all of these things, there is a more advanced version that you can pay for and get some more data. But this is also just totally free. So for instance, if I were to go to socialsearcher.com and go and type in, let's say, COVID-19 vaccine, right? So something that is probably being written about a lot on social media right now. This is going to take a minute because Social Searcher is going to do a search across, it says 11 sources, and I'll show you what those sources are here in a minute. And it's going to look for every single mention of whatever keywords I pop into that search bar. So this will take a minute because it'll show you the results. You can sort the order that it shows you the results in, but it's going to look at results from today first. And then if you keep on scrolling down this page, it'll just keep on going back in time, keep on going back in time, keep on going back in time. So there's lots of potential information here. If I click into these filters here, you can see what sources that it's potentially looking at. So it's looking at all of the big social media networks and also some smaller ones, right? Some ones that maybe you haven't even looked at before. It's also searching the web. All right, so I could filter that out to just see one thing or the other. So if you scroll down through here, you see I'm getting a lot from Facebook. These are posts just today from usually larger accounts at first, and then we get into usually some users, just some regular folks like you and me. We've got Twitter, we've got usually get an Instagram somewhere around here at this point. So this is, again, sort of a good top level use as you're just starting to understand what the online conversation around the topic is. There's a lot of noise here, so you'll definitely want to take advantage of those filters and maybe just search a few, one or two social networks just to get an idea. But it's a good start. If you click this detailed statistics button, this is where we start to get a little bit more information though. First of all, it gives you, a little bit of a time range here. Shows you sort of where it's searching and when search results are spiking. It's showing you all these different social networks, so I could start to filter some of these out if I didn't want that data. And this tells you a little bit more information about where it's coming from, what time of day it's coming from, what hashtags they're using, all of that. Here's the sentiment piece that I mentioned. I wanted just to drill down on this real quick. So this is able to give you sort of a nice top level, I keep on using that phrase, but really that's what this tool is for, just to give you sort of an overview. This gives you a nice look at generally what the sentiment is on these different social networks when users or accounts are posting about the COVID-19 vaccine. So whereas I think many look at the COVID-19 vaccine as a net positive and are probably writing positively about it, you can see there's a fair amount of negative and a fair amount of neutral. I mean, this ratio sort of tells you something. This tells you that not every social media user, in fact, only 3/5 of social media users are writing positively about the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, or not 3/5, but a 3-to-2 ratio of social media users in this particular search. Now, is this perfect? No. The way that this search engine categorizes this is based on certain search terms that they're looking for. They're looking for just different keywords that usually mean that something is positive or negative in the post, but it's not perfect. Again, this is just sort of a top level overview here. One thing that I really like, and there's some other stuff here too that you can look at, top users, links. I really like this keywords tab though, because this is where you start to get a sense of how users are writing about things, which can help you do more advanced searches later. So the most used keyword in these posts is the, which is not particularly helpful, right? But the second most used is COVID-19. So you notice that in my search, I wrote COVID-19. This is telling me that it's probably I'm more likely to get more results in a search potentially if I search without the dash, if I just do COVID-19 all as one word. So that I think is pretty useful. Same thing here with 2 words. Again, no dash, just COVID-19 and then space vaccine. And then the United States is if we're going out to 3 keywords, these are the words that are being used more often in this particular search. So just a nice way to get some a little bit of top level data to maybe understand, one, are there a lot of mentions of this topic that I'm looking for? I sort of picked one where obviously there's going to be a lot of mentions. But then I can also start to see the way that people are writing about it, users are writing about it. And that can be useful as I'm trying to do more advanced searches later. Google custom search will be much more familiar with this. But if you haven't done a custom search on Google before, there's all these different sort of search functions you can throw into the search bar to help you get to exactly what you're looking for. And one of the things that you could do is search specifically on a social media network by putting an at in front of a word to search for social media. So for example, if I go to Google and I type at Twitter COVID-19 vaccine, all of my results are going to be from Twitter accounts, profile pages, and also posts. So we're getting a lot of stuff here from official sources, right? And then one thing that Twitter does, which is kind of nice, is it tells you when it's giving you more than just a profile page. So next to twitter.com, it says CDC Gov. So we know that's the CDC Twitter account. And status here tells me that this is a post. It's going to take me to a post that CDC Gov put up, right? So again, just sort of a top level way to see, all right, are there a lot of posts and where are the posts coming from? Just know that Google, the way their algorithms work, the way they rank searches, they're going to give a lot more weight to these kind of official accounts. So it's not a great way to find specific people unless they're famous people. But again, it's just sort of a top level way to start to do a little bit of search. All right, we'll do much more advanced search here in a little bit, but these are 2 good ways to sort of start your research and your listening on social media, just to know what's there. All right. Before we get any deeper into any of that, and again, please stop me at any point if you have questions, because we're moving into a new section now. But before we get any deeper into more advanced search, I wanted to take a minute to talk about verification, right? Because it's sort of the critical piece of using social media as a tool to bring to find people, to find sources and bring your stories to life. You have to verify that the people you're finding are who they say they are, that what they're saying is accurate, and you have to take a few steps to do that. And an example I always bring up here is this story from what seems like a long time ago, before the pandemic started, but only a few weeks before that, Kobe Bryant and his daughter died in a helicopter crash. Social media, so I think this happened on a Sunday, if I'm remembering correctly, and I learned about it from Twitter, as I learn about most breaking news events. And boy, misinformation about the death really just spread like wildfire online, totally driven by social media users, some of which were malicious, some of which were just careless. So as journalists, we have to make sure that we don't fall into either category, right? We certainly aren't malicious, but we also can't be careless, especially because on social media platforms, we're the ones that tend to have the larger followings among the non-celebrity class of social media users. So we have even greater responsibility to sort of make sure what we're doing here. So this is a PolitiFact story that is linked to in this presentation. You can go and look at it when I share the slides with you later. But here's some key takeaways from the story. In the hours after Bryant's death, social media users posted video that was supposed to be of the crash. It wasn't. And these videos received millions of views on YouTube. All right, so millions of people watched that video, these videos, and thought, this is the helicopter crash. Social media users also reported that Bryant's death was planned. In one case, that it was a ritual sacrifice. This was stuff that got hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of views. Also, social media users reported that Hillary Clinton had murdered Kobe Bryant, and those posts were shared thousands of times. So I bring all this up just to say, boy, misinformation spreads really fast. So as journalists, we have to be just sort of extra careful to verify, right? To make sure that what we are finding is actually true. Because otherwise, when the people, the sources, the trends, the topics that you're searching to try to bring a story to life, try to bring a data story to life or any story to life, could end up sinking your story instead. So the internet and social media are essential and powerful reporting tools, but they're also unreliable sources of information. And they should never be the only source of information, right? And frankly, neither should most websites. Here's just some ideas for how you can verify content and verify users. So remember that trending news is not necessarily real news. Always find additional sources on social, also not on social. If someone says that they are a professor at the University of Maryland, I'm saying that you should probably Google me to make sure that there's some official website that verifies what I'm saying, right? I could just be some person who has a laptop and PowerPoint. Do some additional searching just to make sure I am who I say I am. Double and triple check everything. That should be pretty natural for reporters. And then also just to look at Google again, Google reverse image search is so great. Often what fools people on the internet are photographs, and a fake account on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or any social media account is always going to have a profile photo attached to it, right? At least a believable one. They will, and what fakers will do is they'll take these photos either from other profiles or from other websites, and they'll crop it to fit to fit their page so that it looks like it's a real person. One way that you can fight that to make sure that that person is actually who they are saying that they are is to use Google reverse image search, which is just images.google.com. It's the usual Google Images search. But if you click this little camera here, if you've never done this before, you can search it by the image. So you can either pop in the URL, the web address of that image, or you can upload an image. You could download an image off of a social media profile, upload that image to Google, and see where else it has appeared. So just to do a very quick demonstration here, I'm going to, I don't think you can see me doing this, but I'm adding a picture here. Now you can probably see. So this is just a logo photograph that was part of the project that the Howard Center for Investigative Journalism at the University of Maryland published about a year ago. All right, so you can sort of see it's this camp, and it's got a little logo information here. So they think that Google thinks, first of all, that maybe what I'm searching for is camping. I'm not, but okay, that's all right. We're on the right track here. It gives me some, camping resources, very kind of Google, very kind. It shows me here some similar images that I could look at, which, all right, that's fine. But here's what I'm really interested in: pages that include matching images. So I've popped this in here, and I'm immediately getting multiple pages, including on social media, that include the exact same image that I've just uploaded. So I told you that this was a photo for a Howard Center for Investigative Journalism project. I think you can probably believe me, because here it is on the Howard Center's Twitter account. Here it is on the Capitol News Service page, which publishes all the Howard Center stories. Here it is on the Merrill College of Journalism website. So I think I probably was telling the truth about that. But you could do that with anything, right? You could do that with any photograph that you want. All right, here's some other ways that we can verify users. And then I have just like a quick exercise. We'll take 5 minutes to do, just to practice spotting a fake social media profile. So how to verify users. Check follower counts. If there's very few followers, that might be a red flag, right? Check when the account was created. If it was just created today and suddenly this user is posting about something very current, something very newsworthy potentially, that is not necessarily a very good sign. It could be a red flag. Who's following the account? Maybe the account does have lots and lots of followers, a few hundred at least, or maybe even thousands of followers. But what do those accounts look like? Do they look like real people? Do they all have profile photographs? Do they all have lots of followers too? Do they not have lots of followers too? The fakers have gotten so good that they create sort of they create rafts of fake accounts to follow each other back and forth. So it has gotten even more difficult to spot the fakes. But we just have to do our best and be sure. So while very few followers may be a red flag, a lot of followers might be a red flag too, right? Look at the post history. Think about what a user usually posts about. So, most users on social media post more about just one thing. Justin Fenton at the Baltimore Sun posts a lot about criminal justice in Baltimore. Also posts a lot about the Orioles. Also posts about, I've seen posts about his cats, right? Justin seems like a real person to me on Twitter. I think he's probably a real person. But I'm not sure if he was just posting on one topic all of the time, sporadically when it's convenient times that he would obviously be a real person. You can also verify the identity separately from social media, and I already mentioned this. You should look me up, Google me, make sure that there's some employer website that you could find my name on. Okay, so quick break here to do this find the fake assignment, and I'm going to drop this into the chat. And this is put together by a company in Baltimore, which does internet security. Very cool. This will take about 5 minutes. So I'm going to refill my coffee. And at 10:10, let's just come back real quick and tell me how you did on the Find the Fake quiz. All right, Johnny's got 100%. Another minute or two to see how everyone else does. Allison, very nice. If anyone gets one wrong, will you be brave enough to say so? Please do. Hope and Crystal, good job. Justin Bieber, yep. That is the one. I would say at least half the people who I give this quiz to usually, if they miss one, it's Justin Bieber. One's tough. 97,000 people were fooled, so you're in good company. All right. All right, great. So I would say even with a couple of misses on Justin Bieber, you all are in very good shape and adept at finding the fakes on social media. So that's really good. That's a good start before we start spending a whole lot of time searching on social, looking for sources to bring our stories alive. I think you all have a high degree of confidence that if you do that, you're not going to get fooled by a fake. So that's good. A couple more ways to verify, and then we're going to get into that search. All right. More ways to verify who is the person, see if they're, if it's, or the user, is it an individual or an organization? Do they say that they're a leader in the field? How do we know? What else have they done? All right. So these are questions that we have to ask ourselves, right? And questions that we should seek to answer before we take sort of at face value what we're finding on a user profile. Look at what they write, including the content, structure, grammar, and style. If there are a lot of misspellings or sort of irregular grammar, that could be a very good sign, a clear sign that something is amiss here. Also, is the information complete and accurate? Are certain things left out if they're tweeting about, or I always say tweet, but if they're posting about a situation that has a lot of information involved, are they leaving out significant bits of information? Google's your best friend here, right? You can spend a little time doing a little bit of a search. And then also think about where the information they're being shared is from. If they're providing a source, that's really easy to check, and then you can find it elsewhere. If they're not providing a source, that's a potential red flag, right? And remember, even though photography is often, photo and video are often very useful in this exercise of proving something is incorrect, always do that reverse Google image search just to make sure that they're not pulling up a picture or a video that was posted 5 years ago, right? When was the information published? Is it still timely? And motivation. Why do we think that this was published? I mentioned Justin Fenton a little bit ago. There was a case in Baltimore. This is probably like a year and a half ago now, but there was a standoff with police officers, and it ended with police shooting the person who was sort of barricaded in their home with a weapon. As this was happening in Baltimore City, tweets from a similar incident that had occurred in Baltimore County a year prior were being recirculated on the social network, because in that Baltimore County case, police had lied about the person who was being barricaded having a weapon, having a gun. The person didn't have a gun, didn't point anything at officers, still got shot. Since there was a similar barricade situation in Baltimore City a year later, those old tweets were being recirculated and being passed off as current, that police were again lying about the suspect having a gun. All right, so this sort of thing happens on social media all of the time by bad actors. So we have to be really, really careful with that. Someone who's new to the area, doesn't understand that Baltimore City and Baltimore County are two different things, could be fooled there, right? So, and you may have that in your community as well. Okay, so I think there's enough of a baseline here for verification that we can talk a little bit more about some advanced search methods that I think will be useful for you. So this next section is about Google and Google Trends. I'm going to come back to this if we have some time at the end, but I'm going to skip it just for right now. And again, if you would like to take a look at this, the slides and presentation will be available after this. Instead, what I would like to do is look at social media, because I think this is the place where it's really going to be most useful for you when you're trying to bring your story to life with finding people, whether they're regular folks like us, or whether they're experts in their field, or someone that you want to include in your story, or if you just want to understand the conversation around a topic. The very first thing that you have to do before you start this search is know who your target audience is, who you're trying to reach, and what kind of folks you're trying to find. And you have to understand the demographics of social media users so that you can better target the audience that you do want to reach. Don't ignore other platforms, but for instance, if your audience that you're trying to reach are 18 to 24, you need to search on TikTok, right? Because that's the most popular social media platform among that age group. You probably need to look at Snapchat. You probably don't need to look at Facebook, right? They might be on there. Most, 7 out of 10 Americans are on Facebook, but you want to skew your search toward who you want your audience to be, who is your target audience, or who you're trying to find. So here's the number I mentioned earlier that I wanted to update for this presentation, only to say that the numbers that I show you, the percentages that I show you in these next few slides are based off of the adult population 18 plus in the United States. So 257 million, right? This is also, so again, we're talking about finding people on social media. So yes, there's people have social media apps on their phone, and that's where they use it a lot. But also, it's important to keep in mind that when we're using social or using the internet at all to find people, to find sources, to find the opinions of a community, it's important to remember that about 18% of the United States households do not have broadband internet. 18%. That's a lot of people that you're just potentially missing if you're only using social and the internet to find sources. So that's just something to keep in mind. And again, the number is actually probably smaller because of mobile devices, but 18% for broadband is, for not having broadband is significant. So keep that in mind. Always think about who you're missing in your reporting. The Pew Research Center does a look at social media platform use every year. This is their most recent research on the percentage of US adults who use these platforms at all. And if you take one thing away from this, this chart here, I would just say, realize that even if maybe you aren't a Facebook user, as younger generations tend not to be right now, or are less likely to be, 7 in 10 Americans use it, right? So it is still where the largest potential audience is. It's where most people are. And so when you're doing research, when you're trying to understand a community, it's a really valuable tool as a journalist. The only thing that is higher than Facebook is YouTube, right? Which is that bar, they only started measuring YouTube in 2018. But you look at all of these others, I mean, it's not even close. So the Facebook audience, it's actually about 69% of US adults. The age breakdown is there. It's sort of, it's pretty even, across demographic areas, and 65 plus, about half of 65 plus are on Facebook as well. It's more women than men, and it's about racially even as in terms of white, Black, or Hispanic. So there's lots of folks on Facebook is the point of that. So I want to show you a couple of things that the best sort of investigative audience editors do in newsrooms, and things that I often try to show students how to do in my courses when we're trying to find folks. So Facebook, you probably use if you use Facebook at all, you have used their search, and you just you look for people, or maybe you look for a group or something like that. But you can really start to filter down your search results in Facebook to find what you're looking for. If you start with a keyword. So I'm going to start with, just to keep it consistent from the start of this presentation to the end, I'm going to look up COVID-19 vaccine. All right, so if I just go to the search bar there and type that in, I get so now my filters are set to all. I'm getting sort of everything. I'm getting stuff from the World Health Organization, from the New York Times. That's fine. I don't want that. I want people, I want conversations, I want communities, I want things that can help me with the story that I'm working on, or things that can help me understand the community that I'm covering. So there's a few ways that you can do this. You could just look at posts, filter that way. You could filter by events if you think there's some vaccination event in your community that you want to learn more about. My favorite thing to do is to go to this groups tab here. Because once you do that, you could potentially get access to hundreds or even thousands of people in a group that's discussing what you're interested in. So just by clicking groups here, I get all these different groups sort of around the world, really, including a couple of anti-vaccine groups, which again, valuable to know what that conversation is, at least. But what I like to do from there is filter down further into the community that I'm covering. So I'm in Baltimore. So I'm going to just put Baltimore in here. You can filter further into public groups or private groups or groups that I'm members of, but I'm just going to keep it in Baltimore. I'm going to do COVID-19 vaccine. And then here, I'm getting a group that has, by it showing up in the search here, it's telling me that there are posts in this group about COVID-19 vaccine. So if I click into this group, I can learn a little bit about it by reading over here. So this is a group of community members, volunteers, advocates, and other vaccine hunter groups helping our community get educated and vaccinated in the Baltimore metropolitan region. And you can tell sort of by the title of this that this is a group that is trying to cater to a Spanish speaking population, which is vaccinated in Baltimore at a lower percentage than the white population, right? So there's a vaccine disparity there, even though there's a large population of Spanish-speaking folks. So as you go through here, you can do a couple of things. You can read these posts and learn about things that are happening, learn about the conversations that are being had, but also you can see who's posting, and the people, the users who are posting in these groups are your potential sources. The people who are, if you're writing a story about COVID-19 vaccine access in Baltimore, these are your potential sources for that story. People who are posting, the people who are commenting, the people who are members of this group. These are folks that you can reach out to and try to get more information from, right? One thing that I always tell the students who are working for me is that we don't just take things that we find in these groups and put them on our news organization's website and report them as news. What we want to use these groups for is reporting and backgrounding and building sources. So I would have a journalist come through and read through these posts, maybe just do it for a few days, see who's posting, what they're posting about, and then reach out to some frequent posters or some frequent commenters, or look through the members of this group and see if there's anyone that we may want to talk to, because there may be a story in here that we would have a much more difficult time finding otherwise, all right? There's other ways that you can sort on Facebook, but that's definitely by far my favorite way to do it. The next slide here that I'm going to skip over is Instagram. You can search by hashtag and by location on Instagram, and you can find some stuff. But the search isn't quite as robust as it is on some of these other platforms. It's still a pretty big platform. 40% of US adults use it, so I wouldn't skip the search. But again, if you want to learn a little bit more about that, I have videos in this presentation that'll walk you through the things that I'm showing you, and also some things that I'm not going to show you. So the next one that I really want to drill in on is Twitter, which if you're a journalist, you're probably on Twitter. And hopefully by now you realize, and if not, you'll learn it now, that just because Twitter is the social platform preferred by most journalists doesn't mean it's the social platform preferred by most people on the internet. Only 22% of United States adults use this platform, all right? So it's sort of important to remember that when we're on here, we're often talking to people like us, but we're also, we're capturing, parts of communities as well, right? It's again, sort of, racially diverse. It's about even men and women, slightly more men. And it's used more by certainly by a younger crowd. But there's still opportunities to find interesting people and useful sources using Twitter. So let me show you one way to do that. Twitter has an advanced search. And if you just go to twitter.com, you can get to their advanced search from your main profile. But I like using TweetDeck. If you haven't used TweetDeck before, it's a free add-on for on your Twitter account. Just go to tweetdeck.twitter.com. If you're logged in, it'll pull up a space that looks sort of like this. If you haven't set it up before, you won't have all these columns set up like I do, but it's fairly intuitive to be able to set it up and sort of give yourself a nice look at things all at once. If anyone wants more information on using TweetDeck, if you haven't used it before, I can send you some information on how to get that set up and how to use it. Really powerful, useful tool as a journalist. But I'm going to start just by searching. So if I'm in TweetDeck, I'm going to come over to search, and you can do this without setting up any of the columns, right? So if you're logged in, I'm going to do COVID vaccine again, right? Just stay consistent. So when I do that, it creates a new column for me, and it took it all the way to the end of my column list here. And it's right now giving me the most recent tweets that include the phrase COVID vaccine, right? Which is, you see, they're coming in now. They keep on coming in, they keep on coming in. I don't know who these people are. I don't know where this is coming from. This is not very useful, right? But this is when we get into the sorting, and it can become extremely useful. So the very first bucket here that we can start to play with is the tweet content. And I can look for either all tweets, or I can say, I only want tweets with images, or I can even be more specific and say, I don't want just images or photos. I want GIFs. I want movable GIFs, or I want videos, or I want live broadcast, or I want something that has any kind of media whatsoever, or I want something that's linking to a source. I can be very specific about the kinds of tweets that I want. That's great. The matching is just my keywords. If there's certain things that I don't want, like if I don't want to get anti-vaxxers in this group, I could, I could exclude those keywords. I can set a date range. All right, so I'm going to do that now. I'm just going to say that I want to look at everything from the first of the month to now, just to sort of pare down the known universe of tweets on this platform. Any language I think is fine. Retweets are included. I think that's fine. I'm going to leave that there. Location. This is, again, really helpful. I think, if nothing else, being able to filter social by location is going to help you in your reporting. So I'm going to choose, again, Baltimore. I'm going to spell it correctly. And then what I'm getting are tweets that are geotagged within 20 kilometers of Baltimore, and I could change that number, right? The weakness of this is that if a user doesn't have their location settings turned on for Twitter, you're not going to get their tweet in the search. All right, so that's a potential drawback, but still, it'll at least filter things down to that are geotagged, and that could be useful. The authors, we can change the kinds of users that we want to see posts from. I have it right now on all users. I'm going to leave it there because I really just want to keep it there for now. But I could also look for a specific user. I could look for things that I've written. I could look just for verified users. So these are people who might be your experts, or could be members of a list. If I have a list of journalists in Baltimore, and I want to see what journalists in Baltimore have written about COVID-19 vaccines since July 1st, I could click that here, and I can see what my competitors are doing. But that's not what we're doing for this exercise. Engagement, I think, is very useful because it can sort of filter out, in some cases, the less interesting, less what's the word? Less impactful content on the platform, right? A user who is not necessarily, who has very few followers and doesn't have a whole lot of engagement, maybe we don't want to see those kinds of posts for our search. So I like to be able to set minimum amounts of engagement on my posts. So, and likes, I think, are a really good one because likes are something that are sort of it's very easy to like a post, right? And if someone likes a post, that usually means there is some kind of good information, or at least there's agreement. And that can sort of be a starting point for finding experts or for finding topics that really resonate in a particular community, right? I think retweets can often be helpful if we're looking for things that people disagree with, right? Because often you get like a quote retweet if someone wants to criticize something that you've written on this platform. Just for this example, I'm going to set my engagement threshold pretty high, and I'm going to use likes. I'm going to say I want something that has 50 likes. So these are going to be people that probably have pretty large accounts and have struck a nerve in one way or another. So I'm going to set it to 50. All right. And you see, as soon as I do that, I get Lena Wen, MD, who's a former Baltimore City Health Commissioner, now is faculty at, I think, George Washington, and also is a frequent columnist for the Washington Post, sort of one of the most reasonable, rational voices around the pandemic that have regular media access in this country. And Dr. Wen posts a lot and is obviously posting about the topic that I'm searching for. So if I am looking for an expert, a local expert for my story on this topic, I know just as someone who lives here that Dr. Wen would be a good local expert to talk to. But I could also scroll down and see who else is involved here. The Dundalk Municipal District is here. They must have done some kind of an event recently. That might be something. Here's another, medical professional. It looks like, some of these just look like people who have large followings. They could potentially be someone we want to talk to. We'd want to spend a little more time on their accounts and their profiles and see what they're saying, see whether it fits into the story we're trying to tell. But you can see how just by hitting a couple of these filters, you're able to find some folks who could potentially be sources for your story. All right. So then the last thing that I want to look at in the search arena is Reddit. All right. And Reddit is even smaller than Twitter. If you haven't used Reddit before, it can be a little overwhelming, I would say, just because it's sort of like, it's like a big internet message board. It's one of the older social media networks. But the users who are involved on Reddit, who post there, are highly engaged, and you can really find some very interesting people, yes, but sort of sentiment and topics, certainly. So here's the demographic information of Reddit. Not a terribly diverse place, but occasionally some good information. So here's Reddit. To do a little bit of a search on Reddit, I always like to start with, when you're searching on Reddit, you can think about it in two different ways. You can think about topic, or you could think about geography. So I'm going to think about geography first here, because again, I'm imagining that I'm doing this story in Baltimore. All right, so I'm going to search Baltimore, and there is a Baltimore subreddit. So a subreddit is just what this social network calls, it's like a section, it's a page, it's a category. And this Baltimore subreddit has everything about posts, all kinds of posts about Baltimore. It's users who live here or have news to share about it or has questions to ask. Um, and it's a good place to just go and learn about what's happening in the community. All right. So now that I'm on the Baltimore subreddit page, R Baltimore, I'm going to do another search, and I'm going to do the same search again. I'm going to do COVID-19 vaccine. All right. So once I do that, I'm getting a full search of the entire Reddit website. So what I want to do for the reporting here is come right below where I'm getting this CDC ad, essentially. And I just want to show the results from our Baltimore. So I want to search specifically in the Baltimore subreddit. All right. And if I wanted to go back and look at all of Reddit, I could do that. As I come to this page, I'm getting just posts that are about the COVID, that mention the COVID-19 vaccine in the Baltimore subreddit. Over here on the left are upvotes and downvotes. So basically the higher the number over here, it's the more likely it is that users of the Baltimore subreddit found this information useful or interesting, worth talking about. So very often, what you're going to see that get like the big upvotes are going to be news stories, which may or may not be useful for you as a reporter. Maybe you wrote that news story, but hey, it might be nice to see that your story is getting shared and upvoted. But there's going to be other things as well, right? There's going to be, so like this post right here was posted by, it looks like the Baltimore City Health Department about vaccine hesitancy. So this looks like it was a conversation that the Baltimore City Health Department was trying, who are excellent on social media. They're trying to start a conversation about this topic on vaccine hesitancy. Here's something that I really like though, and I'll just go to the most recent one, I think. Like I said, these users are so engaged on this platform. This was something that was really useful to watch for a while. So sometime either in May or June, I forget now exactly when, the mayor of Baltimore and the city health commissioner said, even after the rest of the state of Maryland had gotten rid of an indoor mask mandate, and the governor had gotten rid of the state mandate to wear masks indoors, Baltimore City was still mandating that if you're inside, you were wearing a mask. The mayor and the city health commissioner said 65%. When we hit 65% of residents with a first dose of the vaccine, then we'll remove the indoor mask mandate. So this user on Reddit started compiling every single day statistics from the city health department and then projecting out based on the daily rate of vaccination when it was likely that the city would reach 65%. All right, so eventually everything changed and the city got rid of its indoor mask mandate early before they hit 65%. But for several weeks, this was a really useful little page on this Reddit account that on this subreddit that was sort of walking through what was happening here. So is this someone who we might want to talk to? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know who this person is. Is this person a medical professional? Are they a scientist? Are they just someone who, with time on their hands, who want to compile these numbers? Do they have strong feelings one way or the other? Do they work in public health? But this is a person who you may want to talk to, right? If you were writing a story about this topic, this is a person who is obviously making a very public effort to to track the progress of the city in vaccinating its residents. Right. So that's just one example of not only understanding a topic that's being discussed, but a person who is among those driving the discussion. All right. And then we're about out of time here. So last couple of things that I'll just go through very quickly. As you're searching, whether it's on Google or any social media platform, think about the keywords you're using. Sort of vary your keywords. If you're looking for information on an automobile accident, for instance, don't just search car or truck, search van, automobile, search vehicle. Start with the most likely candidate and then try the others. When I'm talking to my older sister in Pennsylvania, anything larger than like a 4-door sedan to her is a truck, right? I wouldn't call everything larger than that a truck, but she does. So if I'm looking for a post that she wrote about an accident involving a couple of Jeeps, I know that she's going to write truck, not Jeep, right? So just think about how people write, how they post, what they write in their posts, and it'll help you maybe find what you're looking for. Similarly, if you can't find what you want with evict or COVID-19, try just COVID-19, all one word, or eviction. Think in terms of topic and geography. I already mentioned that. Know your keywords, but also think about how users relate their experiences. How do they tell their story? So I've had a great deal of success in finding personal stories on social media, people that we want to talk to, by adding the words me, I, or my to my keyword searches. My brother is getting evicted from his home. My mom is looking for her first COVID-19 vaccination shot and can't find it. Where can I go? Adding some of those words to your searches can help you find those personal stories. Here's a couple more resources that you could go to and check out. This research guides, I want to especially call out to you because if you go to this page, there's a lot of what I've already discussed is here, but this was put together by a former New York Times researcher for finding people and sources on social media, and it has even more stuff than what I just discussed. And it's really a wonderful resource. These other things here are also very nice. NPR does nice training for finding sources on different social media platforms. And this is just the Online News Association's social media topic page. All right. And we've got like 4 minutes left, which I'm sorry about that. But I would be happy to take any questions if there are any. And again, I'll give the slides to Rebecca in case anyone wants to follow up or anything.
Any questions for Alex? Well, actually, I feel like I have so many more tools to find out information on the socials that doesn't just seem totally specious and random. So thank you for giving us tools to verify all those crazy stories. Now maybe we'll all go work for Snopes too. So I appreciate you spending time with us. We'll do one last call. Anything bubbling up for you guys on things you'll take away from this, or questions, clarifications? Okay.
Yeah, I've got one. Larry. Hey, I think maybe this is just like all too obvious, but for the sake of our audience, I'm assuming that as you track down these names, probably the best way that you're going to have to get in touch with them is if you find them on Facebook, send them a private message on Facebook and hope that that's how they get back to you. Has that pretty much been the experience here in terms of the best way to actually make contact with the folks that you've identified here as potential sources for your work?
I think it's a good strategy, Larry, simply because if you're finding someone on Facebook, you're probably finding them because they're active there. And so it's likely that they'll be checking, messages or willing to respond to your comment. But I would ask, for or say to everyone here that before you do any of that, I would do just some basic verification and make sure that there's another source indicating, who they are.
Sure. Yeah. Now, my assumption is that we are talking about verifiable, real, decent sources that you can use in the story. But that's the best way to go. The easiest way to go, anyhow, to make that first contact with with that stranger who could be helpful to you.
Yeah, I think that's a good strategy, Larry.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Well, I feel like we're all armed just enough to be dangerous. And so next week, the Delaware Community Foundation session will be about cross-platform content preparation. So everyone is writing for so many different platforms, whether it's online and print or broadcast in print or radio and print. So we'll get some tips from experts on how to repurpose and make our content work in a lot of different platforms. And then we will start to wind up our Into the Newsroom sessions with Danielle Ohl, August 3rd, who's going to talk to us about using public records in reporting. And then Next Generation of Journalism will wind us up August 11th. So if you've missed any of our previous sessions, they're all archived for posterity on MDDC's YouTube channel. You can also get to that link at our website, mddcpress.com. So once again, thank you to Alex, and we will see you all next time.